Hey, welcome to How To in a Few. Today, kind of a special episode. We're going to take a look at texturing sheetrock. Now this video, it's going to be a little erratic. I haven't really planned it all out, but when I first started working on the house after the flood that we had, one of the main things that was weighing on my mind was texturing the walls. I'm not a sheetrock person, and I'll start by saying I am in no way a professional. But did some research and some reading to see how to do texturing, because that's the scariest part, at least it was for me. Everybody can roll some paint on a wall, and you know, putting some joint compound and sanding that down, that's probably something that's pretty straightforward too. And at least you know, as you're sanding it down, you can see the job that you're doing and whether or not it's coming out all right. But texturing, right? Once you're spraying texture on an entire room, that's a scary thing, and you want to be sure that you're doing it right. So there's a couple of different ways to texture, but the majority of houses have something called orange peel. The top here is orange peel, and basically it consists of a kind of splattered on lightened mixture of joint compound. The same stuff that you see hardened here is thinned down and then sprayed on here, and like I said, that's a scary thing to get it right. So I will show you what I've learned, and I'll go ahead and share the most important thing that I've learned over about a year now of working from one room to the next, is that it's not that big of a deal. So there's a lot of room for variation, and you're probably, like I was, worried that you're going to get it wrong and mess up the whole wall. But texturing is a process to hide your mistakes or imperfections, and that's exactly what it does. And I'll take you through the whole step today, from mixing it to loading the hopper gun and applying it. We'll take a look at some of the critical things that you should look for, at least from an amateur level. Obviously, you pros out there, go ahead and comment and bash me all you want. Like I said, not a professional, just someone who learned from his mistakes. And there weren't really that many mistakes. It's easier than you think. So let's go ahead and get started with mixing things up. Alright, so here's a look at 2 buckets of texture. Obviously we can see that this nice white one is new. That comes pre-mixed. And we're going to save that. But you could have used that. Then I have some texture. Actually, this was a bucket like that. There's some leftover texture like that in there. And this is also a different brand of texture. But it's just joint compound texture. I shouldn't be called texture. It's joint compound. All of it's joint compound. No difference. It's a slightly different color because it's different brand, or it might be a little older. But I dumped it in this bucket too. There's also powdered kind that you can get. If I had some of that, I would throw it in there too, because it's all this. If you're worried about doing this kind of work, you're taking it way too serious. Same thing with mixing it. Now, a lot of the guys online will tell you that it needs to be the consistency of pancake mix. I don't know about you guys, but I don't do pancakes, so that means almost nothing to me. So we're going to go ahead and mix it up. Plug my drill in. It is going to be very helpful if you have a paint mixer and a fairly competent drill. And you can see right now that is not pancake mix. So let's get some water and see what happens. Alright, this looks like 8 cups or whatever. Alright, not even close. Not even close. Alright, in all honesty, that was a little bit too much water. I don't know. It's close. It's close, but I like it to kind of pick up a little more and drip, so we'll go ahead and thicken it up. Alright, bucket's getting full now, but I actually feel like it's still a little bit thin, so I've added a little bit more new texture. It doesn't help that the new texture apparently is part of a thin batch too, because normally the pre-made texture is a little bit thicker than this. Alright, in all honesty, I think I'm on the thin side, but we're going to go ahead and roll with this. Alright, next thing that you're going to need is a hopper gun. And we have one here. This one is from the discount tool store. And it comes with 3 different size spouts, nozzles, and I've been running the smallest one. I switched to the largest one when I repaired some of the popcorn sealing, but for the texture I use the smallest. And there's also adjustment on the back here which does something. I've played with it and haven't really noticed very much. Do notice a difference if you barely squeeze the trigger or if you go full blast, especially if your air pressure gets low. You need a good compressor, one of those little pancake ones. I'm not sure that's gonna get you by with something like this because there's a lot of air leakage on these guns. So in time, you need to disconnect periodically to let the compressor, have a fairly large one, to let it recoup. I can just show you that, it just leaks like a sieve. Constantly blowing air like an air gun right from the get-go. So you're going to have to work like on and off to manage your compressor. What else can I tell you about it? The lower the pressure, the bigger the globs are that are going to come out, and it'll give you a slightly different pattern. So if you're noticing that it's starting to spit larger, I don't really want to call it chunks, but larger spots of texture, then you probably want to take a break for a couple seconds, let your compressor catch up. On the other hand, if you want larger spots, maybe you can play with this. I'm not playing with that too much, but you can also run. There were some guys recommending like 30 pounds, but I guess you could go even lower to get whatever effect you're looking for. But do the whole room the same and you shouldn't have a problem. And I realize sometimes you might want to just texture an area where you're repairing, but if at all possible, I would do the whole room. That way you end up with the same look in the whole room or whole house. What else can I tell you? Alright, so that's about it. We are going to start in the room that's the least prepped. It's the laundry room, and I'll show you a little bit of that as I'm applying it. But because it's the least prepped, then we're going to work back this way towards the garage through the more prepped room. This room gets more traffic. It's also where I keep my little office. So I want this to look a little better and take a little more time. Whereas, not that I don't care about the laundry room, but it's going to be less seen, and we're kind of operating against a deadline to try to get as much done on the days that we're off as we can. So, alright, I'm going to take you around and show you a couple of problem areas that you might have that you want to kind of be mindful of before we go ahead and start. Alright, so one place that texturing is important is in the cracks. Okay, because there are tools, and I think I did a pretty good job on this seam here, but there's some imperfections there that are going to need to be hidden by the texture. So the inside of cracks, and then also these corners. If you try to joint compound these or cover it with paint, you're going to have continued problems, and the best solution that I've found to dealing with these kind of knocked off spots is to make sure they're sanded, smooth, and then when you come with the texture gun, make sure that you apply like, and I wouldn't say extra, but additional amount along that surface. And hit those first so that when you're coming back around to texture the entire wall, you already have a layer that's starting to dry on there. So the second time as you're coming by, that'll be like an extra layer on that. And then once it's painted, it should have a nice coating to protect it. My door is opening up behind me. I'm going to go grab that. Alright, next area is where the ceiling meets. Now this ceiling is popcorn, and it's actually been painted with ceiling paint. Ceiling paint has some, I want to believe, chalky substances in it, which make it almost like a super thin joint compound. Has a nice white finish, but so does the joint compound. So as I'm texturing close to the ceiling, I don't have to tape off the ceiling in this case. Now if you have a different colored ceiling, or if your ceiling is smooth or not orange peeled, then you know, you're going to have issues there too. You will have to provide some type of separation, but I don't. Once I texture, you won't even see the overspray. In fact, it'll actually help blend that whole seam a little bit better. And you see some of the pre-existing paint still shining through. After we texture, it's going to be one color, essentially ready to be rolled and cut in. Now, because we're also going to be putting in new floors, and this is due to flood damage of these repairs, our floor is removed, and that's kind of, it looks pretty nasty right now, but so we kind of have some freedom there that we didn't have to protect the floor that was in place. So I will be spraying texture, and then when we get to the flooring, we'll be scraping and cleaning and prepping the floor to go down at some point. So yeah, unfortunately, if you are texturing in a room where you're preserving the floor, you need to provide a barrier there too. Okay, so one thing you probably wouldn't think about is lung protection, especially with texture. Maybe you think of it with paint, but not with texture. But I'm going to warn you and say that you definitely need to go ahead and get yourself a little $20 respirator filter. You're going to thank me because it does have a peculiar smell to it, the texture, and there is some chemical binding stuff in there that can be pretty nasty on your lungs. You're not going to like it. So Getting one of these will go a long way. You probably should wear eye protection too, which, well, you're not going to see me do that today, but you should. A couple other things. I guess that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and get all set up, load up the hopper, put my mask on, and I'm going to start by hitting some of the more trouble spots in here. So we are getting some plumbing work done here tomorrow, so I'm kind of prepping this room for paint as much as possible before that, and then there's still going to be some sheetrock work to be done in this corner, but I want to get this done and drying so that we can at least get some of these rooms painted, and then we'll see what happens here. We have a small leak on the washer nozzles.
Alright, it's quite heavy. Hopper's full.
Alright, so we are about 3 scoops in from our big bucket. 3 of those measuring cup scoops. And I know it's hard to show you what we have. Don't even know if we can get it up close. But I have about 2.5 walls in here covered. I put it heavy in some areas where there were repairs. And I guess I could try to take this off and see if we can't see it in the light. I'm also dealing with the little LCD screen, so that's kind of a heavy area. A little bit less up to the top. It's really prominent there. Eventually that's going to dry and turn white, and you won't see it as much. And there's some imperfections there, color imperfections. I touched my finger right there, so I probably need to hit that again. There's a couple of high spots, little chunks that's normal, and we'll knock those off later. Now if you were doing like a knockdown texture, you would let this dry for 30 minutes to an hour and then come behind it with a giant flat tool and just start stroking from the top to the bottom to knock it down, or basically smear it. If you ask me, I think that's ugly. I prefer to leave it just like it is, splattered. I'm seeing a hole right there that I missed. Also missed a little corner right there. I have to remember to come back and just hit that with my fingerprint. Alright, so another quick look. The room finished now. There's some high spots that are going to get knocked off after they dry. All the corners are covered. That's going to be a nice finish once it's painted. There are some things textures won't cover. You can't cover a hole in the wall. But this room is finished texture wise. Outlets are going to get replaced. Now it's on to the real room. So I honestly thought we mixed too much texture. And now I find myself hoping we have enough to make it through this room without mixing more. Alright, so not much left. Just enough probably to touch up a couple of spots. Alright, so that's about it to texturing walls. Before I close out the video, I will take you into the living room, show you some spots, how it looks after it's painted. You just have to trust me on it. There's a spot where I'll show you where new sheetrock was put in, much like this. And then also a spot where there was a hole a little higher up from a chair or something. You know, you have kids, who knows how those things happen. There was a spot patch, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed with myself. The very first work that I did was in the bathroom. I'm not going to show you that, although it's not that bad. You can notice kind of a swell, but that's more a floating issue than texturing. So first time that I ever even messed, well, I wouldn't say first, but first time that I seriously messed with sheetrock. And so, you know, that's the worst, which majority of people won't even notice, but I know it's there. And then I'll show you the living room where I'm actually pretty impressed with the work that I did. I can still see it. I don't think anybody else can see it though. So we'll check that out. Alright, I'm not so sure this was, that could have been an idea to show you the painted wall, but so this was cut, and everything below, about right here, is new sheetrock. I'm saying that it might not have been a good idea to have the window open. I'm trying to get as much light in here as I can. Casting a couple of shadows, but there's no differentiation between completely blank new sheetrock that's down here at the bottom, major repairs here, and the top, which is original. And then on this side is where I was telling you there was a hole knocked in, right about this area. And I prepared a patch, seamed it, and then you see all the new texture really came out. Here you kind of get an idea too. You can see in the sun, well, I mean, I'm going off of what I'm seeing. Hopefully, I don't know how good that's coming out. Here you can see some bigger splotches. That's from the air pressure going down a little bit. But all in all, even big splotches here, and then smaller splotches in other areas. It's a pretty good match, and I have to say that I doubt a professional. They could have done it faster. I'm not sure they could have done it better. Maybe so, you know, it is what it is. But in the end, I'm pleased with it, and you have to be pleased with whatever it is that you're doing. All right, just a quick look at day 2. Here's those little high points I was talking about, and you just need to knock them off. As you can tell, day 2, the room looks entirely different. It's ready to be painted. Alright, so there you go. We'll let this dry, and then we're going to knock off some of these high points. You see a couple of little spots here that are going to harden up and form kind of a little tip that needs to be knocked off with a, whatever you want to call it, scraper or a sheetrock tool. And we'll knock those down before it gets painted, hopefully tomorrow. So I laid it on pretty thick. I have a little bit more. What I'm going to do right now is carry my light around and look for any spots that I might have missed or spots that need a little bit more. There's still about a quarter of a hopper and maybe enough to fill 2 more of those scoops that I was using. So a little bit left, but like I said, I'll probably find some spots where I could hit it a little bit more, just kind of to make sure everything's covered. And well, if this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. That goes a long way for YouTubers like me. It's the reason why we make videos for people like you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.